goes on, it 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 goes on.
Good evening, Murfreesboro. Good evening, Murfreesboro. This is Miss Row Red on WGNS. The beat goes on. Tonight, we have a special guest in the radio studio, and it is Dale Armour. Dale Armour is running for Rutherford County Sheriff. And I would like for you all to call in with questions for Mr. Armour. We are on FM 100.5, FM 101.9, AM 1450, and you can stream us online at WGNSradio.com. But for those of you who are going to call in tonight with questions for Mr. Armour, our number is 615-893-1450. So please call in. Please call in with your hard questions for Mr. Armour. And he doesn't mind taking those questions. So, Mr. Armour, we thank you for being on the radio with us tonight. And I'm just going to give you all a little bit about Mr. Armour. He has a very diverse background in law enforcement. He has 34 years of law enforcement experience. He has experience with Violent Crimes Task Force with the FBI, Special Agent Criminal Investigator with the TBI, Criminal Investigator with the Tennessee Highway Patrol, and Patrol Officer and Training Officer with the Murfreesboro Police Department. And he is the only candidate running who is not a former employee.
That's correct.
Am I correct in saying that?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I welcome you again, and I would like for you to just give us a little bit about your background.
I started out at Murfreesboro Police Department in 1979 after I graduated Oakland in 78. Started out as a police department as a patrol officer. Murfreesboro then was a small town. I think there was about 85 police officers at that time. After 3 years, I was part of the original field training program. Just a little historical note, Chief Glenn Chrisman started that field training program. He was a sergeant, so he was my sergeant at that time.
Okay.
Anyway, I stayed 7 years with the Murfreesboro Police Department. I had an opportunity in '86 to go to work for the Tennessee Highway Patrol Investigations Division, and I was hired that first year, what we would now call identity theft. At that time, I set up a program with driver's license fraud across the state. Personal computers were not a thing at the time, and a lot of people were using fraudulent documents to walk into our driver's license stations to obtain false ID. This was all way before 9/11, so there was not a lot of checks and balances.
Yeah.
Anyway, I set this program up, moved it across the state. I went from Memphis to Kingsport with it, training driver's license examiners, doing investigations where, when I could, that picked up on this. And it's funny you say driver's license fraud. I wound up getting involved in bank fraud investigations. I wound up getting involved in a lot of identity theft investigations where people were fugitives, were coming in, getting new identities so they could run. So it became, it was that first year, and as a matter of fact, it got to be a little overwhelming for one person. And after a year, they actually put me out with all the other investigators and took this program and shared it with everyone else in that division. So anyway, it was one of the first things. I wrote the driver's license fraud manual for the state.
Oh, great.
And I spent the next 9 years doing regular criminal investigative work for the state. In addition to the fraudulent ID, I spent 2 years working undercover in narcotics. That was probably not the best time of my life. I'm not really a good undercover agent, I don't feel like. I have a passion for locating and finding people.
Okay.
So in '96, I had an opportunity to go to work for the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. It was just a transfer. When I went through the TBI Agent Academy, I was class president. Sad note there, when I graduated, the day that I gave the commencement speech, I buried my father that afternoon.
Wow.
But I knew he would have wanted me to complete that task. My dad was, some people may remember, was the Fire and Police Commissioner here in Murfreesboro.
What was his name?
His name was Claude Armour. And prior to that, he spent a lot of time in Memphis. He went back when Dr. King was assassinated to handle the riots for the governor's office. In '71, I believe it was, he went in with Governor Dunn as State Safety Commissioner. And then in '75, the city of Murfreesboro asked him to come here and work at the police and fire department. anyway, I'm following the footsteps here.
I see.
So, little legacy
Many
going
years.
here. Yes.
Many years.
Anyway, being with TBI over the years, I have had an opportunity to do a little bit of everything. I got loaned out to U.S. Marshal Service for 2 years as a fugitive investigator. I managed our top 10 fugitive program for many, many years.
For Rutherford?
For the state of Tennessee,
for the entire state.
Yeah, and of course, the TBI Most Wanted program deals with the worst of the worst. So we were going after the bank. We were going after armed robbers, some child predators, homicide suspects. That was our job. I remember making the 100th capture on a child rapist. So I spent 7 years managing 29 counties in drug enforcement. That is where I really learned to work with local agencies. That's sharing resources. That's something I think law enforcement needs to be able to do, especially as budgets get tight. We need to make sure that what resources one agency has, if we can put them together with other resources for the grand picture of protecting the public, and that's what we're designed for. That's what we do. 2 years ago, I think it was, I asked to go to the FBI on a violent crimes unit, and I was working bank robberies and gangbankers.
Wow.
So, and actually that's, it's not quite as scary to go arrest a bank robber as it is running for public office, I'll tell you that right there.
Wow, that's a lot.
So anyway, after I've been through the FBI National Academy, graduated MTSU, and graduated from University of New York. I've got extensive studies through the University of Virginia and University of Tennessee in management. I have a passion for management. I have a passion for protecting the public.
Great.
So I've got 2 grandchildren growing up in this county. I've got 2 daughters, and my son live here. So,
so
I'm trying
really
to give back
for you.
Right. When I say that the taxpayers have given me a fantastic career, I've got to guard. I've been involved in guarding presidents. I've got to put a lot of bad people in jail. I just want to give back all this experience. 34 years. Matter of fact, August 1st will be 35.
Wow.
So
congratulations.
Oh, thank you. I'm not ready to sit down. I'm ready to go back to work and do some more. I'm currently on leave as a TBI agent. We are. They're very particular about the Little Hatch Act.
Okay,
that's a statute.
Explain that to me.
Anytime an agency gets federal funds, there is a lot of things they can't do while they're employed as a government employee.
Okay.
Luckily, I had about 6 months of vacation time built up, so I've taken that time to run. So I'm actually on leave of absence while I run here.
Okay, I got you. Gotcha.
But I really would like to have some callers to call in, ask what I'm really interested in knowing what they feel about their sheriff's department, what needs to be improved. I am the candidate that's running that's not mad at anybody. I'm not vengeful. I don't have a bone to pick with anybody over there. There's a lot of good people that work at that sheriff's department. I've worked with a lot of them. I'm not. I'm not social with a lot of them, but I have, business-wise, there's some great people over there. And I probably have one of the most unique philosophies on politics because I'm not a politician. I've been a law enforcement officer my whole life.
What is that philosophy?
When you're elected to office, you're a temporary employee.
Yes, you are.
You work for the citizens for 4 years for your term. Then you come back, and that's when you get your personnel evaluation. Is after about 3.5 years, you see whether or not they want you back for 4 more or not. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay. I really want to give back. I feel like the sheriff's department is the 400 and something employees that work over there. They're the career employees. That's who belongs. That sheriff's department is made up of those people, but it actually belongs to the citizens. I'm asking the citizens of Murfreesboro and Rutherford County to give me a 4-year temporary job to manage their department, to give back to them the management experience and the diverse training and experience I've had, just to try to make this place a better place. I'm not going to make that my kingdom over there.
Right. Exactly.
I'm just here for a temporary employee. I want to prepare the employees over there to move up. I want to stretch them a little bit to make sure they reach their goals. Politics has no place in law enforcement.
Okay.
As a sheriff, yes, you're an elected official, but again, you don't. The employees over there need to be able to go do their job.
Exactly.
So,
as the sheriff, can you explain to us what exactly that position entails?
The unique thing about the sheriff position is that it is a constitution position. It's in the state constitution. He is the chief law enforcement officer of the county. We have a chief of police in all the cities here, from Eagleville to Laverne, Smyrna, and Murfreesboro. But the sheriff is actually the constitutional officer that's elected by the people to enforce the laws, keep the courts, serve the warrants, and to maintain the peace and dignity of the county.
Okay.
Our resources should actually be used in this county because we've got some very good police departments here.
Right.
We need to take our county resources and move them out to the unincorporated areas. Even though the sheriff has authority right in downtown Murfreesboro, for example, we need to take our resources and use them out where they really need it. And that's where the public, it doesn't have the benefit. Right now we're inside the city limits of Murfreesboro.
Right.
If we have an issue here, we call 911. We're going to have an officer here within a matter of seconds. You imagine if you have an emergency and you're in Christiana or you're in out past Walter Hill, you may be 30 minutes before you get somebody there.
Right.
So I believe we need to take our resources and move them out.
So let me ask you on that question, on that note, if you become sheriff, how is it that you would make that happen?
First thing, walk in the door, September 1, is the employees over there need to realize that it doesn't matter who they voted for.
Right.
It doesn't matter whose sign they had in their yard. The politics is over. The election's over.
Exactly.
It is now time to go to work. And not saying they're not working, but I mean it's time to go to work. Not worry about the political aspect of it. It's time to do their job the county pays them to. I believe that we've gotten a little top heavy as far over there.
Meaning?
We've got more chiefs than we do Indians sometimes.
Gotcha. Okay.
I believe we need to make sure that we are getting the coverage and pushing out. There's a $38, almost $39 million budget.
Oh, wow.
It's gone up about $9 million in the last 4 years. Some of it has been needed as far as like there was some updates that need to be done. It had fallen by the wayside. So I'm not saying that we've had this complete runaway budget as far as wasteful, but I mean there's been some stuff that's gone out that I want to walk in. The nice thing about being someone who has never worked at that sheriff's department, I use the phrase, I can see the trees in the forest. And that's something I want to walk in. If you do something for 20 years, you may be doing it wrong for the last 20 years. So I'm going to be able to walk in the door, talk
brand new eyes,
brand new set of eyes, and ask the employees, what can we do to do our job better? How can we get more patrol officers out in the county? What do we need to do as an agency to protect the citizens of Murfreesboro and Rutherford County? I think that's probably the best thing that I have going for me is that I'm open-minded. I can walk in, I can talk to everybody. And
you said that information would come from the employees.
But I also want to hear from the citizens.
Okay.
I've talked to a lot of fire chiefs in the volunteer fire departments since I've been running. And I've asked them, I said, would you have a problem for me to show up in your community and announce it to the community? The sheriff's going to be here, say Thursday afternoon at 6 o'clock. Pot of coffee's going to be on. Come in, tell me what we're doing right, tell me what we're doing wrong, tell me what's going on in the community.
Just an open forum for community folks. I like that.
I think it's something, you can get behind tinted windows and closed doors, and the public a lot of times doesn't have that, maybe not the feeling that they can approach you.
Exactly.
I want to make sure that we're approachable.
With an open door policy.
Right.
A real open door policy.
Absolutely. We're servants. Law enforcement is a servant.
That's right.
We're protectors, and we need to make sure that we're protecting. But we also, I don't want people to be scared of law enforcement. I don't want to think, oh my gosh, there's a cop behind me, there's a deputy sheriff behind me. I want them to respect what's going on. It's not good to be
funny that you say that, because sometimes I am. It's like I'm not doing anything,
right?
But I'm driving, and it's like the police are behind me. It's like, okay, let me slow down, and you could see people slowing down. But I understand what you're saying.
And it's never nice to get pulled over and given a ticket. Okay, we can all agree to that.
That's right.
But you don't have to be scared of the enforcer. And I think one of the things that I should be able to bring to the table there is that I believe in treating people well.
Good.
So if you walk in and you treat your employees well, then you should expect them to treat the public well.
Exactly. It all starts from the top, and they emulate what they see their quote-unquote leaders doing.
Absolutely.
If the leader is not a good leader, then your employees are going to follow suit. We're going to take a break right now, and then we're going to come back with Del Armour, who's running for Rutherford County Sheriff.
This is Councilman Ron Washington, and I am one of the sponsors of this show. I hope that today's show is informative and in some cases causes you, the public, to engage in activity that will help the community and people that you don't even know. This show is committed to raising issues crucial to all of us, but in particular, the African American community. So don't go anywhere. Stay right here.
Gresham & Associates Cardiology Group with Dr. Tina Gresham has relocated to 745 South Church Street, Suite A1. Dr. Gresham offers full cardiology services which include echocardiograms, treadmill and nuclear stress tests, full cardiovascular evaluations, preventive cardiology, weight management counseling, and she offers preventive diagnostic cardiac rehab. She can be reached at 931-735-6300, option number 1. Dr. Gresham is accepting new patients at this time, servicing the Shelbyville, Murfreesboro, and surrounding areas. And we are back to The Beat Goes On with Dale Armour, who is running for Rutherford County Sheriff. And when we left off, you were discussing some information about, budgets and wasteful spending and, the way that, the budget should be handled at the Sheriff's Department. I wanted to know, though, as a citizen, if I wanted to know the amount of money that was being spent for certain things that they're supposed to be spent for at the Sheriff's Department, would I be able to obtain that information?
The information's public record. You should be able to get it either through the county finance department. That's a $39 million budget. I believe we need a certified public accountant, or at least someone who has the an accounting degree and the experience working with a government budget. Now, you're still running a business.
Right.
You've still got money coming in, money going out, payroll. You've got prisoners that have to be fed.
Exactly.
So it's something I'm surprised we do not have. And when I asked that question in the budget, why do we not have a CPA position? And I think that's something that we need. We're now at the part where, as taxpayers, we need to know what that question you just asked is something we need to know.
That's right.
Where's my money going?
Right. And I asked that because I've heard a lot of talk about the budget and, that there's a lot of wasteful spending. So that's why I asked that question.
The questions that I get asked mostly by the public is how many uniforms the department needs. The sheriff made a statement in the budget meeting one night that he had Class A, Class B, Class C, Class D. I think he said Class E uniforms. Might have gone to F.
That's 5, right?
And I'm wondering, and I understand when I started out in the police department, we had a Class A uniform.
Okay. Everybody?
Everybody. It was a blue uniform. You had your badge. Then they started going into like SWAT team, canine handlers.
Gotcha.
Then they went to a Class B, which is like a utility uniform. So I understood Class A, Class B.
Okay.
And then they came out with a dress uniform for like upper command. That was like a suit coat with the stripes and stuff. But I'm really not sure when you start getting into all the different uniforms.
Gotcha.
Is it something that we, and if the same uniforms, if they're buying different colored uniforms, but they're the same make and model other than color, and we're getting the same price. I mean, if they're needed, by all means, we need uniforms. I am concerned, and this is something that should concern every citizen out here, because not only are we trying to protect our officers, but that officer has to protect us.
That's right.
I have talked to 2 different deputies who said their bullet-resistant vests have been expired for years.
No.
So, number one, we got an officer safety issue.
Exactly.
Number 2, if the officer is incapacitated and he can't do his job, he can't do his job to protect us.
Right. So that's going to be probably one of the first things that, as sheriff, that you would look into.
Safety equipment is something that we need. We need training. And I'm getting a little bit off the budget here.
Okay.
But something that, since we're talking about training, I'm a firm believer in training. A lot of times, we see the news and we see an officer has made a mistake. He's been caught on video doing something. I have a my management philosophy for people, especially in law enforcement, is that it may not necessarily mean that they did something intentionally wrong. So when you do have an incident out here, when it's looked at, I believe it needs to be looked at under 4 things. Was the officer properly trained to do what he was supposed to be doing? Was he managed properly?
Okay.
Is the leadership there to make sure that he is managed and properly trained?
That's right.
Or is it malicious?
Right.
Now, if it's malicious, you deal with it swiftly, and you deal with it professionally, and you deal with it equally. It's the same offense gets the same thing. I don't believe in favoritism.
I don't either.
So, if Deputy A does something and Deputy B does the same thing, you don't smack one on the wrist and pat the other one on the back.
Exactly.
Now, that's something so anyway, I look at those 4 things for a decision. Law enforcement has changed in the last 34 years since I came on.
How would you say that it has?
I think the public is more wiser. They're more educated.
I would agree with that.
Right. They're also more leery. They're more distrustful.
I would agree with that.
I believe law enforcement in general, not just the sheriff's department, law enforcement in general needs transparency. And when you say transparency, the public needs to understand that the officers need to do their job.
Right.
And they need to be held accountable. And if they do something wrong, it's taken care of.
That's right.
I don't know that this is being done anywhere else. My idea for transparency for, say, an officer issue, I'm a firm believer in part-time employees because our budgets are getting too big. If you hire somebody and pay them, something like 2/3 of their salary is actually benefits. So if you hire somebody for $30,000, you may have $70,000 or $80,000 or more invested in that person for benefits. If you hire part-time people, sometimes for certain jobs, it's a savings to the county.
That makes sense.
One of the things I would like to do is, and I don't have anybody in mind for this job, but I would like to put out a job specification, job spec, hire maybe 2 part-time retired state or federal investigators who have no connection to the sheriff's department. They don't go fishing with anybody over there. They didn't go through the police academy over there. I don't even care if they don't even live in the county. And when we have an incident that needs to be investigated internally, you call these guys or girls, they show up, they're paid by the hour.
Neutral parties.
Once it's over, they give the report and they go home.
Okay.
It doesn't matter the outcome. All they're going to do is give you an honest appraisal of what happened,
Okay.
Do the investigation, turn it over to you, and go home. So we're not keeping someone, we're not paying them full time. We hope you'll never need them. Hope they'll go a whole year. You don't ever need somebody like that. But if you do, you've got somebody in the wings, and they can go in and come in and do your internals for you, and then you deal with it. Whether it's hopefully there's nothing criminal there, but if you need to deal with it, you deal with it with a district attorney. Now, my home agency, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, will come in and do an investigation at the request of the district attorney on officer misconduct, but it should have a criminal emphasis to it. A lot of times it may be a policy issue. It's not necessarily someone's done something criminal. Right.
Just a violation of policy.
Right. So nothing really comes to mind right now, but let's say a use of force. Maybe a use of force is something that it needs to be investigated. I think if we do an independent investigation, the public then sees that you're, number one, you're as transparent as you possibly can.
Exactly.
There's no nepotism involved. There's nothing that's going to be that way.
That is very important.
Right. And you can honestly look the public in the eye and say, we've done this investigation, or this investigation was completed. Here's a copy of it.
And the public has actually seen that because the department is being transparent and not trying to hide anything.
Absolutely.
Right. I think that's wonderful, and that's exactly what we need. And I think that with that, we can get a lot more trust from people in the community, because it's just like you said, it's a lot of people that do not trust the police right now. So I want to ask you, with that said, we know that a lot of things go on in our community, and people will not call the police. They will not tell. They will not say anything about it, but they know that it's going on. So how is it that you would build that trust relationship between the community and the police department?
I think, number one, they need to realize that we're going to police ourselves.
Okay.
And that kind of goes back to what I was just talking about a while ago. If we've got an issue, we're going to deal with it professionally and transparently. two, I think the public needs to feel respected.
Exactly.
I don't want someone to walk into the sheriff's department and have someone say, "What do you want?" I want them to say, "How may I help you?"
Right. Good customer service.
Absolutely. and that's what we're talking about. Whether you're a police officer, sheriff's deputy,
That's right.
CEO,
Wherever you work, really.
or or if you're behind the counter at Wendy's, customer service is something that's important.
Very important.
I think once the public realizes that we are approachable, and you've got to remember, law enforcement officers are human beings. They're hired out of the same group of people that
and they make mistakes just like
absolutely.
we do. That's right.
And I go back. I'm not somebody that really just wants to put a thumb on somebody and say, "Well, you've done something really wrong here. We're going to hammer you or throw you under the bus," as the saying goes. I want number one, I want my agency to understand that you're supported. You're going to if you're doing the right thing, or if you do the wrong thing but for the right reason, you're trying to do the right thing and it just comes out bad.
Right.
That if it's training, we're going to fix it that way. The public is going to understand that. But I believe also, I was talking about having coffee at the fire departments. I think the public needs to feel comfortable walking in the door, and if you've got a problem, the public has a problem. They know it's been addressed. If you call it, if Mr. Smith comes in and says, "Well, I had a deputy the other night. It came by the house, and I wasn't happy with the investigation he did." You follow up, and then you call Mr. Smith back and say, "Okay, this is what we found out."
That's good.
And it's not necessarily the officer did anything wrong. It's just this may be a procedure we have to go through.
But instead of saying we'll take care of it,
right?
And Mr. Smith never knows what the outcome was.
Absolutely. I really want the public's feedback. I do know that I'm working for the public. I know that whatever we do, you think about government as a whole. We have street departments, we have the fire departments, EMS. Law enforcement not only has that part of the government, but they also have an enforcement arm. And law enforcement holds a lot of responsibility to the public, and we give law enforcement officers a lot of power.
We do.
They're the ones that enforce our laws.
Right.
They're the ones that can deprive someone of liberty by arresting them.
That's right.
We need to make sure our officers are trained well. We need to make sure that they have the right mindset, that our job is to protect the public. And I feel like we do a good job if the public feels protected.
Exactly.
And if the public doesn't feel protected, we need to know that. I think that's where I'm kind of going. That's my train of thought here is that if the public understands that we're there for them,
right.
We're not there for us.
Right, exactly.
Right. We're there to protect the public. That's what we get paid for.
And they can see and feel that. That's another part of customer service, seeing and feeling that you are there for us and not just, just talking, talking to talk.
I believe when you take a mirror and hold it up to any department, that it should be representative of your community. You don't hire someone because you like them.
Right.
You hire somebody who is efficient and is the right person for that job. But I also believe that our departments should also reflect our community. We have
the diversity in the community is what you're talking about. The department reflecting.
Absolutely. We need to make sure that sometimes people don't feel comfortable talking to someone. I don't wear a uniform. I wear civilian clothes every day to work. It's rare for me, unless we're going to arrest somebody and we put on a bulletproof vest or something like that. When I deal with the public, they see someone dressed similar to them. But you start talking to someone who, number one, is already fearful.
Exactly.
And you've got this person standing there in this uniform. Whether they might be the nicest person in the world, that uniform represents something.
It does.
And it represents something to different communities. And I believe if we are open about that and realize that we need to be, like I said, a mirror of our community, I think that's something that the public needs to hear.
I like that.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Let me ask you this. I know that you're not running as an affiliate of any party.
Right.
You are running as an independent candidate.
Correct.
Right. Can you tell us why?
Several reasons. Number one, like I said earlier, I don't believe law enforcement should be a party. I think it should be for everybody.
Right.
I'm a very conservative. I lean Republican. Matter of fact, I grew up in a Republican household. My values are small business. My mom owned a business here in Murfreesboro. My dad was in government. I believe in that form. I'm also, that's my personal belief.
Okay.
I'm also under the Hatch Act because I'm still a state employee. I cannot declare a party.
Gotcha.
Even though I lean very conservative, I lean very Christian conservative.
Gotcha.
I still am. I'm still under that Hatch Act issue. So if I wanted to come up and say that I was going to declare a party, I couldn't.
You're saying Hatch Act.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just want to make sure that.
I believe they call it the Hatch Act is the federal, and then they got the Little Hatch Act, I believe, is the state law.
Okay.
And when I went to our legal office at TBI and said I was getting ready to run, of course they set me down with everything and said, okay, you can only do this or do that. And matter of fact, the day that my announcement went out that I was going to run, I had not filed my paperwork with the Election Commission. My press release went out a couple of days early. I had already worked it out where I was going to leave on a certain date in February to run. And that night they called and said, what are you doing? You've already you have now made yourself a candidate. And I went, well, I'm not technically an official candidate yet. I haven't filed my paperwork back. And they said, well, we're going to go back to legal on this. I said, well, I'll tell you what, I do not want to cause a problem. And if it's an issue that will cause the TBI an issue or cause me an issue, I tell you what, let's just do the best thing possible. I said, I'll be in the morning at 8 o'clock. I'll turn in my car and all my my gear or whatever, and I'll officially go and leave early. So the memo I had already written asking for the time off, we just went in, modified it, and the next day I left. So that way I'm completely separated from the department.
That was a good thing.
So
that was a good thing. I really want people to call in tonight because I want them to get their questions answered, whatever those questions might be. And I know that a lot of people do have questions, and this is a great outlet for people to ask those questions, because for one thing, we can't see who you are. and people are more comfortable that way, just calling in. We don't know who it is, but we would love for people to call in and get their questions answered. Looks like we have a caller. I'm hoping that we do. All right. We do have a caller on the line. Caller, you are on the line.
Yes, I got one question. I carry my kids, my grandkids, to Blackman School and drop them off every day. All last year, it was 4 county cops dropping their kids off. And I just don't think that's right.
Okay.
I'm paying their salary while they're out dropping their kids off. If they want to, they can come by and pick my kids up.
Are you saying,
how do you feel about that?
Are you saying that you were upset because they were dropping them off in the county cars? Is that what you're saying? Oh, he's gone. Okay.
I believe that's what he was getting at, because I've heard this question before. And the government vehicle belongs to the county. It should be used for county resources only.
Right. Okay.
Emergency situations sometimes dictate you have to, but not as a normal course of business. No, you don't do that.
Not as your family car.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Okay. That's what he was talking about.
Yes, I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
Okay. Thank you, caller.
Caller, if I was wrong, please call me back. But I think that's where you're going with that.
Thank you, caller. One question that I do want to ask: How would you handle politics in the office? I know that you said that there's not a place for it.
Absolutely.
In the office. From what I'm hearing now, it lives there right now. So, when you become sheriff, tell me how, or let the community know how you would address that, because it's live there now.
You can never take politics out of anything.
Okay.
I worked in a factory here in Murfreesboro at Rich Products back in '78 when I got out of high school, and there was some form of politics there. But for the most part, if you treat people equally and well, reward good behavior, correct bad behavior.
Exactly.
Law enforcement swears an oath to the Constitution, to the people, that they're going to do their job, and they're going to do it impartially. And as long as the officers and I keep saying deputies and officers like but there's a lot of good people at that sheriff's department that
Right.
don't carry a badge and gun. So I'm really saying it for everybody.
Okay.
Even though I keep harping on the law enforcement, the detention facility out there, for one thing, is those guys and girls are just as much and just as important at that department as the patrol guys on the street. Because if they're not doing their job in the back, if we have a prisoner escape, we have a prisoner that's abused, if we have a prisoner that dies back there,
Right.
that's bad.
That is
it also sets up
terribly
the
bad.
taxpayers for a liability situation. And of course, the county's self-insured, so if there's a lawsuit that develops out of that sheriff's department in the back, then we as taxpayers pay for that.
Right.
So to answer your question, if I can treat, if everyone understands it works there, you do your job. I'm not going to show favoritism.
Good.
I think that's the best way I take the politics out of it.
Okay.
Deputy Smith and Deputy Jones are treated the same.
Exactly. And that's the way that it should be.
I made a statement the other night that if a detention officer, a dispatcher, and a road deputy pass each other in a hallway, they are 3 equal parts of that sheriff's department. There's not a class system there.
Right.
Their jobs are different, but they are still county employees that work for a sheriff's department that are protecting the public, and their jobs are just different. So they need to be treated equally, and they should be respected equally.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. I like that. I like that philosophy. What do you see as one of the biggest problems in Rutherford County that needs to be addressed from that sheriff's department?
I think law enforcement in general, we've seen the gang issue in our country, not just Rutherford County. Gang issue is something that we're seeing. The police department, when I left, was if we had a gang, we probably didn't know it. Now we've got gangs everywhere.
Yeah.
We are having gang members that are being transferred here from court systems out of state, or maybe from Memphis. They're moving here to avoid prosecution there by telling the judge, if you'll let me move to Murfreesboro to my aunt's house, or Laverne to my aunt's house, I won't come back to your court. So all you're doing is taking a piece of cancer and moving that piece of cancer into Rutherford County. So I believe gangs, are something we're going to have to address.
Yes.
And we address it by working together with all the other agencies. It's not a single agency issue. It's a community issue.
Okay.
Not just law enforcement, but we need to address it through our churches, through our schools, through our public agencies, our law enforcement.
We're going to come back to that conversation, but we have a caller on the line. Caller, you're on the line. Hello, caller, you're on the line.
Hello?
Yes, you have a question for Mr. Armour? Caller,
Hello?
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, my question is about the garden. There's been a lot of conversation about the garden, and we had heard that it's obvious when you go by, there's no fence or anything to keep, I don't know who's allowed to go work in the garden. I'm sure that it's surely prisoners that are not at flight risk or whatever. But there's no fencing around that garden. There's nothing to keep some family member from bringing paraphernalia or cell phones or drugs or whatever and just toss them in the garden. And then those prisoners go out and they get to go through that garden freely, and has heard that they're not even allowed to be searched as they go back in. Want to know if Mr. Armour knows anything about that, if that's true, and how he would secure that, if the garden went on, because the garden's not even, as far as everybody can find out, is not USDA approved food. So it really can't be served to the prisoners as it was said it was, because if it's not USDA approved food, you can't serve that in the jail. So I just would like to hear his thoughts about the whole garden process.
Okay. I believe you're bringing up 2 issues there. You're bringing up a security issue.
Yes.
Okay. The prisoners, the inmates, prisoners that work that garden are probably trustees. Hopefully they are vetted by the sheriff's department that they're not a flight risk. But you are correct. Contraband could be placed in that garden for a prisoner to sneak back into the jail. So if they're not being searched, that is not only if that is correct, we have an issue there that's probably against the Correctional Institute's rules and regulations. It's also a safety issue. Knives, guns, drugs, whatever being introduced into a jail is a problem. The second part of that would be the FDA-approved food. I have heard that they are saying they're serving the food to the inmates. I'm not a farmer. I was born and raised in a city. The only garden I've ever attended to was not very successful, but they're saying a lot of food goes back. I don't know how they can, if they're serving as much food as they say they are, I don't know how that plot of land is bringing it up. But I do know, and I have verified through Davidson County Sheriff's Department, that food has to be FDA approved before it can be served to an inmate. So either we have, if food's being served there, they either have to have an FDA inspector, or our county is in violation of that regulation. Does that answer your questions?
I think so. Just wondering, because this keeps coming up, but I'm not sure that any media outlet is following through and investigating to whether are they indeed FDA approved, or is this just something else that has,
Okay. Well, number one, I'm not against the garden or anything that allows the inmates to do something so that they're not sitting idle. I'm very much for the inmate to have that experience, whether it's a life experience or it's a way to get rid of some energy. I'm okay with the garden, but I am concerned if the garden is being used to supplement the prisoner's food, and it's not. If we're in violation, then I do not want the FDA to come down on this county because we're in violation.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
You may want to give out the number too. It took me a while to find the number.
Sure.
To call in. That may be.
Sure. We'll give that out again.
So you may want to advertise it.
Yes, ma'am. We'll give it out again. Thank you. And I'll give it out right now. That number to call in, and thank you for your call. The number to call in is 615-893-1450, 1450. We're going to take a break, and we're going to be back with Dale Armour, who's running for Rutherford County Sheriff.
The beat goes on, and the beat goes on. The beat goes on. The beat goes on.
Gresham & Associates Cardiology Group with Dr. Tina Gresham has relocated to 745 South Church Street, Suite A1. Dr. Gresham offers full cardiology services, which include echocardiograms, treadmill and nuclear stress tests, full cardiovascular evaluations, preventive cardiology, weight management counseling, and she offers preventive diagnostic cardiac rehab. She can be reached at 931-735-6300, option number 1. Dr. Gresham is accepting new patients at this time, servicing the Shelbyville, Murfreesboro, and surrounding areas. And we are back to The Beat Goes On, and we're talking to Dale Armour, who is running for Rutherford County Sheriff. And before the caller called in, and again, I thank you for that caller, I just want to give this number out one more time. It's 615-893-1450. And I want the community to call in and ask Mr. Armour questions. Get your questions answered now. But before the caller called in, Mr. Armour was telling us about the gang issue that we had in Rutherford County. And, you know, I worked in juvenile court for some years, and I remember that was the first time that I had ever heard about the gang issue, and that was like in the 90s, I want to say. Mid to late 90s. And I I didn't know. I didn't know that that was here in my community. And so I used to see pictures because we worked closely with the police department. So, you know, they were able to share the pictures and stuff that they had, because those children, I was with Children's Services, and so we got to see that, and I was just amazed at what is here in the community, and people don't know about this. A lot of people don't know about this. But one thing that you had said that you think that this is an issue that not only law enforcement needs to deal with, but the churches and the community as a whole. So I want to know what that looks like. So when you say that, you know, we need help from our church, our religious community, how does that look? What is it that community can do to help?
I think the church community itself can reach out to, excuse me, they can reach out to their community around their churches, give a safe place, give an alternative. It has been recorded that a lot of gang members are looking for family. Oh. Okay. It's not necessarily, and the gang becomes a family to them. They become part of something. They get to. So right, I believe that's something when you talk about churches and the community itself. I think people, they need a sense of belonging, and I'd much rather somebody belong to something that's good than something that's that's used for violence. Right. Okay. You know, one of the things that gang members prey on, the older gang members, when they prey on our younger children, and they're now getting into our middle schools and and they're recruiting. Wow. And of course, you know, to young impressionable children who maybe doesn't have a father figure or doesn't have that family structure. Right. They look cool. Enticing. Right. You know, their brains haven't developed yet, and I'm not a doctor. I'm not a surgeon. Right. Didn't stay at Holiday Inn last night. We understand where you're going with that. You know, children start seeing something, and in this role model, whether it's good or bad, they start liking it. We need to find a way to embrace that child. And you know, like I said, law enforcement is enforcement. That's what we do. We enforce. We detain. We present to court. But if you start opening up the doors and saying, let's bring people into the jail, for example. There is a jail ministry. I think it probably needs to be expanded. Okay. I believe our jail ministry should be something that should be a positive thing. If an inmate wants that reinforcement, that positive reinforcement, sometimes people just want to be loved on. Right. So let them, I think that's something we need to work with. You know, if you tell somebody they're bad, and you just keep telling them they're bad, they believe they're bad. Okay. We got another caller? Yes, we do have another caller. Caller, you are on the line.
Okay. Well, good afternoon. I just wanted to call. There's been a lot of talk about cutting the budget. And Mr. Armour, I just wanted to ask, with 80% of that budget going to the salaries, I just want to see if you could maybe outline for all of us listening out here this Sunday afternoon, where exactly do you plan on cutting that budget? And I'll hang up and listen. Thank you for your call. First thing in there, I would like to have an accountant as part of my staff. And we're going to take that budget line by line. And if there is something we can cut down on, we're going to do that. Okay. You know, cars, for example. You know, the caller a while ago talked about deputies dropping family off with the cars. Not everybody needs a vehicle issued to them at the sheriff's department. That's one way of maybe looking at it. Okay. Also, the type of vehicle. Our deputies need good, solid, safe vehicles on the road. You know, I know how a patrol car runs. It may sit idling at a wreck scene for an hour, and then a few minutes later they're running emergency traffic somewhere down the interstate. They need good, safe cars. But a lot of the other employees who need cars to do their job don't have that responsibility. Cars are something I think we can look at. But anyway, to answer the caller's question, if we take the budget line by line and look, the nice thing about going in the door from the outside is that I don't have any preconceived notions about what's needed. I can actually go in and articulate to me, you know, Captain or Lieutenant, why do we need this particular item? And if we need it, I'll fight for it to get it. But if it's something that's, you know,
It's like our family budget. When my wife and I sit down and do our budget, we have our needs, shelter, utilities, food, and then you have your wants, and that's the vacations or the new cars or whatever. And I think we need to run the government the same way. If you can, okay, this is what we've got to have to do our job. It would be nice if we had this. Well, can we afford it? And it's the same way with the family. So I think that's the way I'm going to look at the budget. I want a professional CPA to look at our budget, and then I want to make sure we go line by line to see how we're going to spend our. Now, I say our. When I say our, I'm talking about taxpayers' money. Okay. Not the sheriff's money. Right. Our money, our taxpayers.
Okay, I think that's a good way of looking at it, and hopefully that answered your your question, caller, and we thank you for your call. Let's talk about some professionalism.
Okay.
And I know that you're a stickler for, being professional and professionalism just, within the department or really wherever you are. I still work for Children's Services now, and I appreciate I appreciate professionalism. I understand that. I understand that, people in leadership positions, and I've always said this, that, people in leadership positions can either have a good impression on the people that they lead or a negative, impression on people that they lead. And we tend to look at our leaders and emulate how they act, be it good or bad,
Absolutely.
So I just want you to talk about professionalism, the professionalism that you would bring to the department. What would that look like, and how will it be different from what we see today?
Number one, you have got to respect your employees.
Most definitely.
If your employees feel respected, they're going to respect you back. They need to know who their leaders are. I believe in walking around management. Great. The employees are going to see me in roll call. They're going to see me back in the back. I want to sit down. I want to know about them. How's the family going? How's the job going? When they call it ivory tower for a reason, but when you sit up at the top and you make rules and regulations and not take into account the people who are actually going to be living under those rules and regulations, you have a problem. If something is coming up that's going to have to be changed, you need feedback from the guys and girls that's in the trenches that's going to have to live with that rule. Will this work? Have we done this before? I think that's something that we need to make sure that the employees understand that they have a voice. They get to buy into the management
That's
part. That's
always a good thing.
And if you've got your employees buying into it, then they're part of the whole thing. If they look at it's management over here to the left and the employee to the right, that's not a good management philosophy.
We're going to take a break right now, and we're going to come back with Del Armour, who's running for Rutherford County Sheriff.
Thank you for joining us tonight. For comments and additional information, mail us at P.O. Box 1474, Murfreesboro, Tennessee, 37133-0608. See you next Sunday night.
Gresham & Associates Cardiology Group with Dr. Tina Gresham has relocated to 745 South Church Street, Suite A1. Dr. Gresham offers full cardiology services which include echocardiograms, treadmill and nuclear stress tests, full cardiovascular evaluations, preventive cardiology, weight management counseling, and she offers preventive diagnostic cardiac rehab. She can be reached at 931-735-6300, option number 1. Dr. Gresham is accepting new patients at this time, servicing the Shelbyville, Murfreesboro, and surrounding areas. Welcome back to The Beat Goes On, and we have here tonight Del Armour, who is running for Rutherford County Sheriff. Before we left, we had a caller on the line. Is that caller still on the line? Caller, you are on the line. Hello, caller.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi, yes. I had a question about the SRO programs in elementary schools.
Yes, sir.
My question is, my wife teaches in an elementary school here in Smyrna, and each year they talk about cutting back the SRO program in the elementary schools, and I was curious what Dale's position was on that.
Good question. The SRO program is something that I support for not only just for the protection of our children, but that the SROs are a viable part of that community. Is they need to let the children in the elementary schools know that law enforcement are not bad people. So I do not want to see that program cut.
Good.
But also, especially in the elementary program, you know, parents are going through divorce. There's issues where the SRO and actually can intervene and look at court documents to see who has a right to that child, to pick up that child, and that the child's safe and is going. So I cut no, support absolutely.
Good. Caller, did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you for calling. Did we have another call on the line? Okay. We do have another caller on the line. Caller, you are on the line. What's your question, please?
Hello.
Hi.
Hey. I just have a quick question, and I'll hang up. My question is, this goes back to rules and regulations. I understand the current SOP, Standard Operating Procedures, that the Sheriff's Department exempts the sheriff from all policies out there. And it's my understanding that Sheriff Arnold was the one that did that. Could you comment on that, on what you would do with it?
Okay. I think the best way to answer that is that the sheriff is responsible for everything that goes on for that 4-year term. That's in the Constitution. So you can say you're not responsible, but you are responsible for everything that happens, and you're not exempt from any of the procedures or policies out there. I think I'm on the right track with what the question was.
Okay.
If an employee does well, you pat him on the back and he does well. But if an employee does something wrong, it's ultimately the responsibility of the sheriff. So the sheriff is not exempt.
Okay.
As a leader, he's not exempt. Now, he may have to be removed from office by the county commission.
Gotcha.
But he's not exempt from the rules, regulations, policies, state law, federal law.
Right.
He is,
and he shouldn't be.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I want to be responsible.
Good.
I want the public to say, you've done right, you've done wrong. I will tell you this, I am not perfect.
None of us are.
No, and I will tell you, as sheriff, if a mistake's made, I'm going to get up in front of the public and say, I made a mistake.
Good.
We're going to fix it.
That'll be a first, but
well,
good.
I'm not going to hide it. I'm not going to sweep it under the rug. We're going to fix it. I don't mind admitting to that I made a mistake.
Right.
Because I really believe if I'm forthright with the public and tell them that I'm trying to do right, I think they will understand that. And like you said, we're not no one's perfect, but we're going to do the best job we can. And when we screw up, we're going to fix it.
And they would really appreciate that. I mean, because we are all human and we all do make mistakes. I want you, before you leave, to tell us why people should support you or why they should vote for you. But before you do that, and we only have 1 minute left, I want to tell people that Election Day is on August the 7th and early voting is July 18th through August the 2nd, so you don't have that much longer to go. Yeah. So, your turn.
Why does the public need to support me for sheriff? I am the one candidate that's running that has the most diverse experience. I have the best, my heart's in the right place to do the best for this community. I'm not mad at anybody. I'm not slinging mud at anyone. I want to make sure that the public understands they're getting a professional law enforcement officer who can prepare their department for this next 15 to 20 years when they're talking about another 300,000 people are going to be coming into Rutherford County.
That's right.
Our sheriff's department is going to be a part of that infrastructure. And I believe I do have that background to make our department. I have that experience to make our department prepared for that. For the issues we're going to have with this large amount of public coming in.
Good. Thank you so much for being here.
And if I haven't had a chance to shake anyone's hand out there, I would ask them for their vote on August the 7th. And I promise you I will do the best job that I can. And and I thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here tonight.